Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to you all from Abuja. Gosh, I feel so far away from my good friends. Hope you're not missing me too much, because I do miss you.
We are.
We'll miss you. Come quickly.
Okay, well, let's get into... I love that. Let's get into our world brief, our global brief. And it's 99 days until Americans head to the polls to elect the next president in what has been described as one of the fastest moving and yet most unpredictable presidential races to date. Now, according to an ABC Ipsos poll, Vice President Kamala Harris is enjoying a bounce in her favorability rating. It's jumped to 43% with an unfavorability rating of 42%. Now, in an earlier ABC Ipsos poll released a week ago, Harris's favorability rating was just 35%, while her unfavorable ratings looked at around 46%. So you can see there's been a considerable jump over the course of the week. And then if we look to the weekend, just ahead of the weekend, former President Barack Obama endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris at long last to be the Democratic presidential nominee. And that ended days of speculation over whether he would support her candidacy. Now, former President Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama, they said in a joint statement that they believe Mrs. Harris has the vision and character and the strength that this critical moment demands. Now, further, if we take a look at the Harris campaign, definitely the endorsement has put an extra wind in the sails of this campaign. We know that it's brought in more than $200 million in funding. 66% of that money is from first-time donors. So it just shows how much new support is backing the Harris campaign. And let's take a look at this graphic. This graphic here says that this weekend alone, the Harris campaign held more than 2,300 events in battleground states. It also opened 250 coordinated battleground offices, and more than 170,000 new protesters joined the campaign this weekend alone. So meanwhile, if we take a look at President Trump's favorability rating, that has dropped slightly from around 40% measured in the following week to the attempted assassination that he survived. And then, of course, the Republican National Convention, which was around 36% in the most recent poll. Now, Trump, at a conservative Christian event just over the weekend in Florida, the former President Donald Trump, he told attendees there that they wouldn't have to vote anymore if they elected him into office this November. He made those comments and implored Christians to save America by voting just this one time, he said, so that he can win the presidential election in a landslide that he says is too big to rig. My dear friends, this election is, of course, too big, or rather a big election. But what are your thoughts on what is happening in the state of U.S. politics so far?
Adefemi, a couple of things. Trump knows what he's saying. And I'm going to put it to you, Adefemi, strongly. I have taken my time to read over 900 pages of the Project 2025 document written by the Heritage Foundation. Trump knows what he's saying, that if Christians vote this one time, Christian nationalism will take over America because they will effect that document in Heritage 2025 project where they are going to change everything to Christians only in America. So that's what he said was true. It's a dog whistle to the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 Christian nationalism project. He knows what he's saying. And that's a direct confirmation. I put it to you. Apart from the one that happened over the weekend, that J.D. Vance wrote a foreword to one of the architects of the 2025 project book, that they are part of that Heritage Foundation Project 2025. Also, apart from the popularity ratings of Kamala going up, the truth is J.D. Vance has been a gift that keeps on giving. All the shenanigans and all the terrible things he's done and has said in the past is coming back to haunt him. All the cat ladies are coming at him now. And for Trump that says, oh, Obama hasn't endorsed her, I'm not going to debate her. Now Obama has endorsed her. Trump, come out of your shells. Come out. Sleepy Trump, come out. Come fight. Come debate, Trump. We're waiting for you. If you dare, come face the prosecutor. The fraudulent man, come face the prosecutor. She's got you covered. She'll eat you up.
All right. So definitely that call on, I believe it was on Friday, just as we left the studio, so that the Obamas, both of them, Barack and Michelle, had called Kamala Harris. And of course, the Democrats made a big show of it, a production of it, to demonstrate that that much-awaited phone call and endorsements had finally been received by one or two of the most prominent Democrats currently, which is the duo of Michelle and Barack. And of course, that could certainly be seen in the opinion polls and ratings over the weekend, because now it's almost an assumption that she would move on to being the Democratic candidate for the elections in November. Now, what this means is that finally, hopefully, we can put to rest the conversation around debates, and that former President Donald Trump would then step up to the plate and stand with her. I think it has just given the fire and momentum to this particular election in the US. But beyond that, let's now go on to Trump's comment. The truth is that, when you look at that comment and speaking to the people he would possibly consider his base, you would notice that Mr. Donald Trump is now working very frantically to ensure that he's able to rally his base. And one of the strongest base would be the Christians. And in the past, this was how he also was able to use that advantage to his benefit. Is Trump a Christian? He says he is. If a man says he's something, you cannot deny whether or not he's a Christian or not. But it is very important that you can compare it to the way that leaders in this part of the world use ethnicity as a bait or to use to curry favor with people whom you know are very passionate or strong or focused on a particular thing, and use it as a weapon to your own advantage. This is what it looks like for me in terms of now telling the Christians, because he wasn't heavy on the Christians as he was, when he was facing Joe Biden. But now that it is a much stronger opponent, an opponent that seems to be gaining ground since she was announced or endorsed by President Joe Biden, he is now trying very much to rally his base. The contentious nature of that particular statement, I think they're trying to explain it and say that, he's just saying that he will solve all the problems. So by, in 4 years' time, they wouldn't need to vote. Even that is a problem, because people should vote every 4 years, irrespective or not just because they want to push a particular candidate in.
Okay, very quickly, I think what is established in the U.S. is that the fact that Kamala Harris coming into the game has changed the dynamics of it. The Obama endorsement is very important. When it came out, it was a lot of excitement. And the fact that also the Kamala Harris campaign has been able to raise $200 million within first week. His campaign spokespersons describe it as a record-shattering election campaign development. So, all the argument about, this is a DEI candidate, diversity, equality, inclusion, that argument holds no water. It looks like, this is going to be a very interesting encounter, and it may not matter at the end of the day, all the talks about, whether somebody has children or somebody is black. The Trump camp will better, prepare themselves for a very tough race going ahead. In other words, the Democratic campaign has been re-energized, and that's what we can put our fingers on with the support from the grassroots. Quickly, two other topics that I think are important. One, Venezuela. 80% of the votes have been counted. Nicolas Maduro, who is seeking a third consecutive term, says he's winning with 51%. Official results so far say the next biggest challenger, Missouri, has 44%. But the opposition is saying they have 70%. So Venezuela is a developing story. We'll see what happens there. In England, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is going to unveil a plan for the autumn budget this morning by 12 noon. But what do we expect? The Labour Party is going to introduce austerity. They are saying they are going to sell off whatever can be sold. Surplus public buildings, they call it. And they are going to fix a black hole of $20 billion left behind by the tourists who refuse to disclose their indebtedness. So interesting time in the UK. And also finally, Israel has said it will hit Hezbollah, Lebanon, very hard. That's the developing story in the Middle East and the fear that there could be an escalation of regional war in the Middle East, southern border of Israel, northern border of Israel, particularly at the Golan Heights, which Israel seized in 1967.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rubin. And I agree with you. What we're seeing, I am. Just listening to what you said about Venezuela, absolutely, it is a very crucial time for the country. And it just shows the political longevity of Nicolas Maduro. At this point, he's already come out to the people in Caracas and other areas of Venezuela, announcing that he has won this election. It's still yet to be confirmed. But if he has been confirmed, then he would then have his third 6-year term at the helm of Venezuela, a country that has been struggling with political strife, also vast economic issues. So it would be very interesting to see what is happening in Venezuela. Thank you so much for that update, Dr. Rubin. Let's move on to our newspapers now, and we will start with the papers here in Nigeria. And let's look at the front cover of this day newspaper. The planned protests are dominating a lot of papers across Nigeria. But if you're looking at the front page of this day, they talk about how there's 3 days until these planned protests and that Nigerians are still divided. You've already mentioned that Kayode Egbetokun, the Inspector General of Police, has reminded protesters that they should register in their respective areas and that they should give information as it pertains to planned routes, how long they choose to be outside, different assembly points. And that is usually customary when it comes to protests. I know, Dr. Rubin, you were talking about how there isn't an actual constitutional mandate for people to do so. But I wonder if this is an example of building some form of mutual understanding between the protesters and the authorities. So that's what we're seeing on the front page of this day. Also, politicians coming out, the likes of Ogun State Governor Dapo Abiodun, calling on protesters to make sure that they're not being used to go out and protest in, I guess, plans that have been put together by alleged other politicians. There's no mention of those other alleged politicians, but again, it's just another political voice calling on people to exercise calm and perhaps not go out onto the streets. That being said, you've got the likes of Peter Obi, who, as you've already mentioned, has thrown his weight behind a peaceful protest. So that's what we're looking at on the front page of this day. If we now move on to the Punch is looking at, again, the ramifications of these planned protests. You've got the likes of the United States, the United Kingdom and Canada all issuing security alerts to their nationals in Nigeria, warning them of potential violence during the planned #EndBadGovernance protests due to start on the 1st of August, just a few days' time. Also, in separate travel advisories, the three countries have cautioned their citizens not to go into areas where confrontations between security agencies and protesters may occur, and they cited historical examples of that. If we now move on to The Guardian is looking at the Petroleum Industry Act and saying that 2 years after its adoption, or the latest version of its adoption, the NNPCL is still struggling with $5.3 billion loans, debt and commercialization. Essentially, what this article and what this front page is saying is that the expected benefit that was supposed to come through the corporation of the NNPCL hasn't actually happened, and rather what we're seeing is a worsening of the state of the oil sector over time. Also on the front page of The Guardian, just to the right-hand side there, you've got the likes of the former NDIC Managing Director, Umaru Ibrahim. He's saying that regulators should support the Dangote refinery in order to mitigate the negative consequences of the fuel scarcity we are seeing today. I'll take this opportunity to shamelessly plug the first episode of The Breakdown on Arise News, where we explain different world topics. The first episode is looking at this very issue with the Dangote refinery and different regulators. It's already on the Arise News YouTube channel, so please do watch, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and let us know what your thoughts are on that report. Moving back to our newspaper review, let's take a look at the Daily Trust. The Daily Trust mentions a few stories. Firstly, they look at how a member of the Zamfara State House of Assembly, Aminu Ibrahim, who represents Kaura Namoda State constituency, he's in police custody, they say, over alleged banditry and kidnapping. There's also the fate, that's the picture headline story there, of more than 200 local council development areas, which are uncertain following the Supreme Court verdict granting financial autonomy to the 774 local government areas in the country. And you've got some lawyers, including senior members of the bar, believing that the recent judgment deprives LCDAs of funds. So just lots of back and forth there. And then lastly, if we look at the front cover of the Vanguard, they are looking at just a small section on the right-hand side. They are looking at fuel prices rising 21% to 850 naira per litre. And they are also mentioning that marketers are shutting stations, which is adding to this scarcity. We'll move on to African papers, and you've got the front page of the Daily Graphic of Kenya. And essentially, they're again looking at William Ruto, and they say that he's resorted to his usual tactics. Now he's touring regions, he's getting a president's welcome, and the article talks about he's going to regions where he has given political appointments, so naturally he's going to be welcomed well. Essentially, this is some form of personal branding, and it's not really painting an accurate picture of William Ruto's image at this moment, especially in the light of so many protests over this finance bill, but also his leadership and the government therein. If we go on to different papers around the world, let's take a look at the Daily Mail, for example. And the GPs, general practitioners in the United Kingdom, they are threatening to bring the NHS to a standstill by cutting the amount of daily appointments by around 3 million appointments could disappear. And that is through action led by the British Medical Association, who have been helping echo the calls of GPs who say that they're being squeezed and they are calling for more pay. And then lastly, we've got the Guardian of the UK. And as you mentioned, Dr. Rubin, you've got Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, paving the way for more cuts and higher taxes as she aims to fix the country's finances.
All right, thank you so much, Adefemi. We're out of time, but just to say that, yes, indeed, looking forward to watching that report. He did an excellent job on it, and he would easily break down the situation with the oil, oil contracts, Dangote Refinery, NMDPRA, just explaining things and breaking it down a bit more for people to understand. Thank you.